Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I guess we're not reviewing DVDs or Blu-rays, huh? Yeah, I thought we'd talk about another great book, time series, which are based on the writer herself, originally, K.A. Applegate, and talk about none other than her all-time favorite and all-time original best novel books for all time for children to read of all ages, Animorphs. Today, on your best movie reviews. Welcome back. Yes, folks, let's talk about none other than Animorphs. So, what can I say about it? It's probably the most greatest book of all time ever been read, and probably the most greatest books of all people who should have heard about it. But the greatest thing about this book, and this is probably far more different than any other alien invasion or based on any alien race taking over the planet Earth, it's far more different than basically those kind of stories. The thing about these series is that it's based on originally 5 teens who are casually trying to know the event of the world is going to basically change. Let's talk about the book, Richard, because originally I want to discuss about my thoughts and my feelings about the books based on of the book itself. So, Aaron, what do you think of? So, Aaron, what do you know much about Animorphs? Well, for starters, I actually had no considerable problem for what it's worth to read the books, because the books themselves are very well storytelling. It's based on originally 5 teens who are occasionally saw a flying mothership cross over their fields, which explains about this strange alien named I can't pronounce his name, but he is an alien who tells them that the human race is under attack. So it's up to Jake, Cassidy, Rachel, Tobias, and even Marco, along with basically the other Antolite alien, come to basically another couple of books, few of the books of the series, and it's up to them to stop these Yerks and these alien life force to develop to take over the planet Earth. So, what I felt about the book itself, it's actually pretty well interesting and entertaining storyline, because you see the teens are morphing into any kind of animal they choose from. Because in the beginning, in the first book, this right here, explains about 5 teens who are very connected that can change any kind of animal they morph into. It could be a lion, it could be a dog, or anything they can change into any kind of animal. But the only thing is, they cannot stay into that animal morph form over 2 Earth hours. And when they stay that long, which is so for 2 hours, at the end of that, they are completely and recognition to be in that animal form forever. And that was explained on Volume 3, the Incarnation Edition, explains about Tobias, the only considered character who was very well shy character, very well considered trying to fit in with the other characters as well. Really stay into hawk form for purpose of a long time. And that explains that originally in the first book, which I have no good. Now there have been other book series. This is far more I have in my book collection. But the thing I like about this book, love the books, is it's actually very well good storytelling, because each character tells their own background story. First, we had Richard Jake telling his own story about how the aliens would come down to Earth, inventing of the human race. And then we have another story named Michelle, with this character right here. You can probably see her. Let me give you a little closer look of it. There she is. Just get her close. But each character tells their own background story, because when you read the books much often in the course of the series, each character will start off their own principal story. Start off with their name, of course. They don't give out their last name or what they live or what they come from. They just basically tell you their first name and what's going on with it in their town, which is a small town, eventually. I don't know where it is, but who knows where, The thing I like about the book is a very well mysterious, a very well mystery series to really see each character really goes on to another form of character. So, what I love about it is pretty well considered interesting, because they're young they are young, they are very well teenagers, but they have a very much of a gift using the power of the morph, and they can morph into any kind of animal. And that's what I love about that, Richard, because it's pretty obvious, whoever thought about Richard want to morph into some kind of creature, they could just, have the capability to smell, to think, to see, and really kind of just understand about be as an animal form. Even if you're basically living in a human body, which you still kind of measure yourself, as an animal liking. And that's what we as human beings as well. We kind of force ourselves to be more animal-liking creatures, and we should force ourselves to be more living things. Or living species, that's what I call it. Living species. But let's basically talk about the book itself. Now, the first book, I'll give you of the covers itself. The reason I love about these covers is that it have a nice, glossy, bumpy, shiny cover. These are actually the original covers that this was basically released. Now, I know originally that Animorphs is having different covers and have a different version. It's the same book, virtually. It just have different covers, virtually, with different characters, virtually. They just really not released these books and in a different format, book cover. And you look at the back. This is actually Jake, of course, who is the leader of the Animorphs here in the Animorph team. And this is the Invasion book. This is the first volume. If you look at the spine, you can see the corresponding numbers. So they actually correspond numbers into 1 to 36 books. So I will eventually come around and getting more of those books eventually. And on the back, it was explained to you about them not telling who they are, well, who their actual last names are, or what they currently live. But what I like about the book is that if you open it up, you will see, if you open the book, you will actually get a nice, good picture art of the animal, or basically the creature, that the kids, that the teens are morphing to, or evolving, I guess you call it. But this is actually pretty awesome, because you got a nice, good picture frame of the lizard, which is pretty awesome. And on the front, you have a text. Basically, one thing I like about these is because about the original covers is that they can morph in each kind. So it's kind of like starts up with human form and then goes to animal form. Same thing as volume 2. There we go. There we go. Same as volume 2. I really like these kind of books, because they're very well shiny, bumpy, and they gloss them so much. And you can see the light gloss them, especially. Yeah, there you go. Just look how shiny that is, And I got these books, from a used bookshop, and I was very surprised because they were very cheap, Same thing again. Spinal cord numbers on the spine. And on the back is just basically info about the characters itself. Originally, each character tells their own story, like, I always think that it's pretty obvious, that when each character tells their own story, it's pretty obvious that they. And here's Michelle morphing into a cat. I do like the fact I do like this picture of Michelle, because she looks very well attractive, I mean, even though when you're young, you kind of find, young, attractive female characters. You know, you just don't see that version much often. So that's pretty cool. And then we have Tobias. I actually chose this one version better because this is actually the first time we see Tobias more as a very interesting character. He morphs into a hawk and stayed in this human form forever. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But the cool thing I like about these books is that they're very well shiny and they're very well glossy. I mean, look at that. There's just so you just don't see books that much often now. I mean, you do, Richard, but it's pretty. So this is Tobias. This is volume 3. Once again, corresponding numbers. If you can probably see it. I'm sorry about my glare. I'm trying to really see the camera so you can see the numbers. So basically, you probably can't see it, but yeah. Corresponding numbers. And on the back, info visually of all of the character. Now when we open her up, we have a nice, awesome picture of Tobias in hawk form. If you probably know, this is actually the opening of the book. Because once, when I saw these books eventually, I was very kind of curious. Okay, well, what's this back project? As well, oh, it's actually just a picture frame of the animals, of the teens Richard morphed into. So that's pretty cool. And it says Richard more info. And finally, we go to volume 4. This is Cassidy. I do like the fact that they try to make the young characters a lot more interesting, Richard, because you don't really see much great artwork than this, Richard. This is probably the far most great artwork I ever seen, Richard, in my entire life, because each, you know, Animorphs books has very well great artwork. And usually it basically be so kind of great, Richard. And then here's the info version of the book stuff. And we can open it up. Got her original morph into a dolphin. That's pretty well cool, Richard. I do like the dolphin picture, Richard, because you got the dolphin, you got the scenery of the sea under the water, which is pretty cool because you don't see that Richard much in any books in this form. So yeah, pretty well interesting, Richard. But what I like about it is basically each character tells their own story and have their own background as to how the story began, especially for this one. So I'm gonna read some infos for you guys so you can basically understand about the story. And this is pretty much off it. So we're starting in chapter 1, and it says, "My name is Jake. That's my first name. Obviously, I can't tell you my last name. It would be too dangerous, because the controllers are everywhere. Everywhere. And if they knew my full name, they could find me and my friends. And then, well, let's just say I don't want them to find what they do to people who are raising them to are horrible to think about. I won't even tell you where I live. You would just have to trust me that it is a real place, a real town, and maybe even your town. I'm writing this all down so that more people will learn the truth, and maybe then somehow the human race can survive until the Andalites return and rescue us as possible they would." And in here we basically got the first chapter. Originally, this is the first chapter of the book, which is up, and explains onto the, let's see if I can basically, because right here you get his, his first name, which is basically right here, and explains that, he can't really tell his hometown or his last name, or even the person's address. So let's basically go a little bit more quotes on it. And I do like the fact, that you have a little image of character image. So originally he's basically still in the human form, but when he turned into animal form, see if I can make it flip the page. There we go. You probably can't see it, but if he turns into he turns to a very awesome creature that turns into an animal form, and that's how basically it is. Because if you look down here, if I could get the camera close, oops, maybe you probably can't see the close of the light, but you can see a little bit of a creature that the character is morphed into. So that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty well considered of explaining. So let's read more quotes of the book itself. Let's try this one. Okay. So I'm looking up, and there was a brilliant blue-white light that was shooting across the sky, going faster at first, too fast for it to basically be an airplane. Then slowly, what is it? Tobias looked up. Tobias shook his head. I don't know. I looked at Tobias, and he looked back at me. We both knew that we thought it was, but we didn't want to say it. Marco and Rachel would have to laugh, we figured, but Casey just blurred it right out. It's a flying saucer. Yeah, this is the end of the chapter of the first, chapter 1, when she says, it's a flying saucer, right here. Probably can see it, right there. You basically glare. There we go. And that's basically how the story tells, especially. Because each character explains their own story. Especially for Michelle, we'll go to Michelle, we'll go for this one. And we can read, this is the invasion, these are the visitor, the invasion, visitor, incarnation, I think that's what it's called, and then the meshes. So, pretty well awesome. Okay, let's read one quote version of Michelle. My name is Michelle. I won't tell you my last name. None of us will even tell our last name. Whatever I do use a last name, it is a fake. Sorry, but that's the way we're supposed to be. And we won't tell you the name of our town, or our school, or even the state of Indiana. If you are told my last name, the Europeans will be able to find my friends and me. If they find us, it will be the end. They might kill us, or worse. That's how intense this book is, because the book series is very well tended to the story. Yes, there really is something worse than death. I see it. I heard the cries of the disaster from the doom by the shelter of the Yerks. And I watched as evil jerkless slimes substances and switching through the ear and taking over taking over what was a free human being. The 5 of us, just 5, Jake, Cassidy, Marco, Tobias, and me. Marco comes up and names us for what we are now, calling us Animorphs. Yeah, and that's what I like about it, basically, because each character tells their own story. And if you probably can see, let's see if we can get you down here. Of course, she says, they might kill us or worse. That's how really heavy this book is, because it tells you as a as a teen or basically a young child or whoever ever read the books, it's a lot more very well good storytelling, because not only that you get very well interesting alien invasion, but you also get very well serious and properly interpreted problems for each character tells their own story, and half the time it's very well interesting, Richly. For other kinds of the books which I haven't read, which the only two books I ever read is this one, Volume 1 and Volume 2, which basically was no big. And so I haven't gone around to reading the book series. I was originally kind of curious watching the TV show series. It was a lot more interesting than probably a lot before, but the books are far more better version than just basically the TV show itself. I mean, don't get me wrong, the TV show itself is actually really just brilliant, and if whenever it comes out on DVD, I'll definitely will pick it up. But the books itself is very well read and actually pretty more interesting, especially with this first volume. It's pretty obvious versus seeing the story of teens which have become the first ever Animorphs and actually really morph into animals. I mean, they have been very simple books that feature that, a character can morph into an animal or shapeshift, and that's like the taking of Beast Boy from the Teen Titans comic book issue. But this is actually pretty much far different originally than Beast Boy in a Teen Titans. This is actually far more different version, because not only you have plot climax and actually good set of characters and very well driven stories, you have very well different story arcs, because each character tells their own story. Now, we'll eventually say there have been 36 volumes of the Animorphs series, because K.A. Appleby, if I can answer her name right, if I can really look at it, she really wanted to create a story based on mercy of humans, and what if the humans were being taken over by aliens, which, that's part of the same format of how, many movies and, books and even radio shows talk about eventually to see what would be like if the human race was taken over. So, originally for stuff, I enjoy reading the book. I enjoy watching the TV show, but the books itself is very well interesting. So, for what it's worth, I think it's worth it for people who are tend to read. I will say, with the new books are coming out, it's the same book virtually. There's nothing changed at all. It has a different cover virtually and different background, which I find that pretty interesting. But these are actually the best versions at all, because these are actually more original than you look at the previous new book covers. Because the book covers tend to have that animal-like formats, but they don't have something like this. Like, you don't have very well simple and interesting something like this, that it has the character itself, and then when he morphs into the animal, you flip the page, and you have a nice good artwork of the animal itself. So it's pretty interesting, and it's a lot more interesting. And it's only run, and it's very much, the pages are very well kind of interesting, especially with, I think, the way I think that the teens, or should I say the kids, I usually call them teens, that the teens are very well kind of complementing each other. And even if they don't tell you what they live or what their last name is, or even they could try to make a fake, town or whatever, it's actually a pretty well interesting story. A lot of people don't like the Animal series because it didn't really tell much story. I mean, how? I mean, just read it basically much more often. I mean, it's not like, okay, there was like long and telling you where they were encouraged to live. If they really tell you that, then I'm pretty sure they'll probably get caught from the Yeerks. The Yeerks are very well alien animal creatures that these slimy things they put into the humans here, and they control them by using those slimy things into the ear, because they can't really just take over the human mind and eventually try to prevent people to take over their minds, which they control them, which you do see that many times in many alien movies, or very like, for instance, Aliens or The Predator or whatever. But this is actually far more better, and actually a lot more cheesy, but it tends to be more cheesy because you don't see like a very kind of a book series something like this that involves with teens morph into animals and save the human race from a bunch of aliens which will come from an outer space, from different galaxy. So I don't know. I personally enjoy it. I think people need to lay off and try to understand this is something that some fans out there who are enjoying reading the book and actually really surprised knowing that it's actually pretty interesting to for what it's worth. And to me, as a fan of the books itself, I actually enjoy it. I have no problem with it. The only thing I will mention is that I haven't read more of these books, which especially with Volume 3, which I haven't read originally yet, which is Volume 3. I just bought Volume 4, which is just now, which is a couple weeks ago, and I really want to basically try to get a couple more of these, which is because they really are just really selling very well cheaper now in certain stores, and you could get these for cheaper if you could basically search around with it. So yeah, that's the Animorphs book series review. I really wanted to basically talk about my personal thoughts about it, especially with the idea of just sitting down and actually watching it and actually really enjoying it. That's what it is. And yeah, I'm personally happy and interested to get these books, and I personally would definitely read them over and over again. And because the story is very well written, the characters are very well interesting, because they have their own story. And it's just one awesome books, and I could not say what anything I can say about it. So that ends the review for now of the Animorphs book series review, and I'll see you next time. Alrighty, until then, this is Prawn. Thank you for watching, and sayonara.